The time for silence is over.
Driving into the Dorchester neighborhood of Waxahachie, you might as well be in Fargo, North Dakota. Roads and yards still covered in ice and snow, upwards of 200 homes without power since Sunday. And since Sunday on Bent Creek Court, no answers when this will all end.
This situation, in our opinion, is just unacceptable. And there's no communication, no feedback, and we're just sitting here trying to stay warm.
We are getting no answers, no how, no way. And if it's going to be another week, everybody is going to lose everything they have.
Water is the other lingering and escaping problem. The city of Dallas with 3 times as many calls for service for water main breaks like this one in the Oak Lawn neighborhood. At the Mosaic Apartments in uptown Dallas, too much frozen water. A broken water pipe in the parking garage and a car now completely encased in ice. In Fort Worth, a large section of West Montgomery Street put under a boil water advisory. At least 212 confirmed water main breaks citywide, with an estimated 200 more to investigate. Some good news from Crum in far north Denton County.
This is going to end up killing my husband.
That phone call yesterday from Shirley Huddleston, her husband on oxygen, needing to stay warm in their car in the driveway.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition. Hello and welcome to The Left Speaks. My name is Chris. I'll be your host today. Today is February the 21st, about a month and a half removed from the insurrection incited by the Republican Party and former President Trump at this point. And for the last week, Texas has been frozen. We're going to dive into the Republican response to that, or rather the lack of the response. Admittedly, that is low-hanging fruit. They don't set the bar very high, unfortunately. And then more importantly, we're going to dive into what caused this, how it happened, and what can be done to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Because if we continue with business as usual and just laugh when Republicans run from their messes, then we're going to keep seeing this. We're also going to go over a few of the Republican excuses that have been given, why Republicans are basically tilting at windmills and blaming it on green energy and the Green New Deal. And then we're going to go into, like I said, what actually happened. As always, the lines are open. They are toll-free. Anyone who agrees or disagrees is more than welcome to call in. Republican callers or conservative callers get priority because I don't want to just listen to the echo chamber. But if you're a liberal or a progressive, or somebody whose house is finally getting back power, you are more than welcome to call in. Through all the politics, let's not forget that there are real people that are being affected by this. I believe the death count is up to 17, potentially 23, depending on how you want to crunch the numbers. And while admittedly, we had a little bit of fun with the mariachi music, There are people who are losing homes, cars, their lives over this mess. And this is another case, as we will go into, of putting profit over people. So, to dive into a few things here. We're going to look at the responses to both of these. From the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and from the Republican senators and one of the Republican representatives from Texas. Texas has been under Republican administration, Republican governor, Republican legislature for 26 years and 20 years, respectively. Do not let Fox News or anyone else convince you that this is somehow the Democrats' fault. Texas has not been a blue state in quite some time. These chickens are coming home to roost, unfortunately. While you were not paying attention, they made changes, deregulated things, and then ran from their responsibilities. As this article points out, this was not a planned vacation from Senator Cruz. The House was frozen, as were so many other Texans. And Senator Cruz, instead of doing what he can to help, public service, what you get elected to do, decided to take his wife, his 2 daughters, I believe, and himself down to Cancun, Mexico. Now, let me be very clear here. I have no issue, none whatsoever, with, if you have the ability, getting your family out of a freezing home. I have no issue with you personally going to an office or a home that is heated. What I do have issue with is you abandoning your duties and taking a freaking vacation. Now, Senator Cruz was caught on the plane by several citizens. Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. Remember that whole proof of election fraud thing somebody asked me about last week? And I said all these nifty little devices have cameras on them. Apparently, Senator Cruz couldn't be bothered to realize that, because all the photos and videos of him in the airport and him on the plane on his way to Cancun instead of doing his freaking job started showing up. So when he got there, and his flight had originally been booked to return on Sunday, he realized this was looking very bad for him and decided to bump his flight up and return a little bit sooner. We know you're just doing it because you got caught, Senator. This is not that hard to figure out. Try being a decent freaking human being, and failing that, try to do your job. What the citizens of Texas elected you to do. For more than 12 hours after the airport departure photos first emerged, Mr. Cruz's office declined to comment on his whereabouts. It took him 12 hours to figure out that maybe, just maybe, this was a boneheaded decision and would not look good to the people who freaking voted for him. And I'm trying really hard not to cuss here. I apologize. 12 hours. With this being blasted all over Twitter, all over the internet, everywhere, that maybe, just maybe, a senator for a state where people are out of power, a state, we're not talking a couple of places here and there, mind you, a state whose entire energy grid had basically failed and people were without power in below freezing temperature for days, maybe, just maybe, the senator of that state should be trying to do something to help. Nobody is advocating that this Yahoo goes and climbs a power line. But surely, as we'll get into, there's something that he could be doing that would be productive, that would serve his citizens, serve his voters. Again, the whole thing he was elected to do. The other senator from the state of Texas is basically saying and doing nothing. I guess that's better than going on vacation while your constituents are freezing to death and losing their homes. But what do I know? One Republican senator doing nothing, the other one going on vacation, getting caught, turning around, flying back home. This is the bar that you have to pass to get elected as a Republican in the state of Texas. Texas, you can do better. You have to do better than this. And finally, one of the congressmen from the state of Texas, Louis Gohmert, of fame for advocating martial law prior to the insurrection attempt, is blaming windmills. The Texas grid wasn't winterized, not because the people who own the power plants and own the regulation authority for the state of Texas didn't want to spend the money to winterize it, but because they spent the money on solar panels and windmills instead. Okay. So solar panels and windmills generate electricity all year round. They make money. Winterizing stuff, making sure it functions in the cold, is a cost. The two things aren't related. You could build more windmills and winterize them along with winterizing all the natural gas and coal plants you have. In fact, as we'll point out here in a minute, the problem wasn't specific to windmills or solar panels or green energy. The problem was the whole damn Texas grid wasn't winterized because Texas doesn't have to follow federal regulations. Now, what were the progressives doing during this time? What was Beto O'Rourke, who ran against the Republicans in Texas and ran for senator for the state of Texas and gave him quite a scare as a Democrat? What was he doing during this time? Not even as an elected official, just as a private citizen. Did he go on vacation? Did he stay silent, just huddled up in his home, burning books and broken tree limbs to try to stay warm? Because yes, that actually happened. Let's check in and see what Beto O'Rourke was doing. Would you look at that? He organized volunteers and made more than 784,000 wellness calls to senior citizens. What he also did was when they checked in on these senior citizens, this wasn't just a, hey, we want to make sure you're doing all right. This was a, hey, are you okay? If you're not, we've got volunteers and we'll try to get you to a place to get warm. You know, serving the people, the citizens of the state of Texas. Not running off to Mexico for an impromptu vacation in the middle of a crisis. And by the way, he'd started that before the news of Senator Ted Cruz running off to Mexico to take vacation even broke. He was doing it because it needed to be done. And if that was your mother or your grandmother who was freezing to death with no power, in the dark, and no water, you might have wanted her to get a phone call like that to check in on her and see if she needed to get somewhere that was warm. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, not from the state of Texas, but recognizing that fellow American citizens are hurting and need help, started a fundraiser to help people down in Texas and has raised $4 million. Not her voters. If she didn't do a damn thing, not a one of them could vote against her. She didn't have to do anything. But she did because she's an American who was elected to serve America's citizens, and she actually gives a shit whether they live or die, whether they need help during a crisis. And then you've got President Biden declaring Texas a national emergency and a state of emergency so we can send federal money down there to help. You've got Democrats and progressives doing stuff. And you've got Republican silence, Republican vacations, and Republicans lying to you about windmills. Quit electing these people. Texas, you can do better. You deserve better. And the same thing they're doing to you, lying to you, running away when there's a problem, letting you freeze to death in the dark while they're sitting on a beach in Cancun, Mexico. The rest of the country, we don't want that person helping make policies that affect the rest of us. So for your sake, and for ours, please do better. Don't forget this the minute that it's over. Don't forget this 4 years from now when Ted Cruz comes up for re-election. Don't forget this 4 years from now when Ted Cruz decides to run for president. This is the kind of reaction and help you get from him. Gonzalo, you're going to have to tell me what the link is, brother. I don't blindly watch YouTube videos on this channel, but if you describe what it is, I'll give it a shot. Assuming it's relevant and assuming you're not a bot, because that's always fun. Now let's go into what caused this. The Republican answer, coming from Fox News, other cable news networks, Louis Gohmert, the state of Texas, is saying that frozen wind turbines, solar panels, and the Green New Deal are to blame for the energy system, for the failure. Okay, so the easy one. The Green New Deal hasn't been voted on in Congress, hasn't passed Congress, isn't a law, so it hasn't affected jack shit yet. They're lying to you. Again. It's literally an idea. It hasn't passed. Nobody has to follow it. So it can't possibly have affected an energy grid when it doesn't even exist yet. Windmills. The windmills in the state of Texas, some of them did freeze because they weren't winterized. Let me show you something really cool here. These are windmills in Antarctica. Texas got cold, but I think Antarctica is going to win. Look at that. Wind turbines can function properly in extremely cold locations, such as Antarctica. If you spend the money to winterize the damn things, when you build them, novel concept, it might just work. Now, I'm from Louisiana, but I lived in Alaska for a few years. The same vehicle that I took from the lower 48, that's what people in Alaska call the rest of the continental United States, doesn't work when the temperature outside is 35, 40, and 55 degrees below zero. You have to put a heater in the engine block and plug your car in to an electrical outlet because the oil freezes. You have to winterize your car. Anyone who lives where the temperatures go to negative knows this. Just because you saw one frozen windmill not turning doesn't mean all windmills are bad. Just like if you saw one idiot who didn't have an engine block heater in his car, doesn't mean that all cars are bad. You have to actually take steps and spend the money to make sure equipment functions properly. Just in case it wasn't clear enough, this is a windmill in Sweden. Swedish windmill seems to be functioning just fine. Sweden, oh look, there's more than one. Oh, I see it spinning. Sweden just spent $8 billion through the pandemic. I think Sweden knows a thing or two about how things work in the cold. I would think if it was impossible for a windmill to function in the cold, somebody in Sweden would have pointed it out before they spent $8 billion investing in windmills. Call me crazy, but I think somebody would have noticed. Maybe some intern in the office would have been like, hey, boss, before you spend that $8 billion, I think you should know windmills don't work when it's cold, man. Maybe they, I don't know, laid off that intern or something, the one guy who knew that windmills couldn't function when it was cold. Come up with a better excuse. Now, here's the worst part. Monthly production. As of October 2020, natural gas, 52% of Texas's output. ERCOT is Texas's power management group, essentially. 52% from natural gas, 23% from wind and solar, 17% from coal, 8% from other, including nuclear, hydroelectric, and petroleum. Now, call me crazy, but that is 69% from natural gas and coal. 69%. But I saw a frozen windmill one time. Come on, guys. Really? Tucker Carlson, Louis Gohmert, y'all can't do any better than this? Are you counting on the average person paying so little attention that they don't notice that Ted Cruz runs off to take vacation? That Senator Cornyn is completely silent? And that Louis Gohmert pops up and says, hey, I saw a frozen windmill, so windmills are the entire problem? That nobody's going to know that there's windmills in Antarctica? That nobody's going to know that there's windmills in Sweden? And that nobody's going to know that 69% of the power in the state of Texas doesn't come from windmills? And it's not like only 17% of Texas was without power. The whole damn grid failed. You had natural gas generators that were freezing and locking up. You had coal generators that were freezing and locking up. And yes, you had some windmills that froze and locked up. The whole damn grid needed to be winterized. Now, Chris, who could have seen this coming? It's Texas. Obviously, they weren't required to regulate to be winterized to the extent that you're saying they should have been winterized to. How is that Republicans' fault? This is a map of the energy grids in the United States. As you can see, right here down the middle is where it's split. You've got the Western interconnection, you've got the Eastern interconnection, and then you've got Texas. Now, why is that? Why is Texas all isolated on its own? Is it because of geography? No. Is it because somehow they couldn't figure out how to run a power line from Arkansas to Texas or from Oklahoma to Texas? No. It's because Texas didn't want to join either one of the other interconnects, either one of the other two federally regulated systems, so Texas didn't have to follow federal regulations, like winterization, like having your equipment be able to function when it's cold. Texas not only is solely reliant on its own grid, but because it's isolated like that, they can't take power from any of the other grids, which is why Oklahoma didn't see the same kind of devastation and damage that Texas did. It's why Louisiana got cold, but you didn't see the same kind of devastation and damage and deaths as you did in Texas. Because not only did Texas's grid fail and freeze because they couldn't be bothered to properly winterize it and follow federal regulations, but then when all of their stuff froze, they were unable to take power from anywhere else. Why does Texas have its own energy grid? From the Texas Tribune. Texas has its own energy grid, you guessed it, to avoid dealing with the feds. And now, if you don't live in the state of Texas, like I don't live in the state of Texas anymore, guess where your federal tax dollars are going to go to help? Because Texas businesses decided against spending the money to winterize their equipment, we now have an enormous natural disaster. And you and I are going to pay for it. Not Texas's Energy Reliability Council, not the power companies down in the state of Texas, you and me, federal taxpayers. I'm getting really tired of bailing out these companies instead of letting them foot the bill like they're supposed to. If you're going to profit from this, ignoring the fact that people died, ignoring the fact that people went cold, you could at least foot the bill for all the freaking damages that you helped cause. You could clean up your own mess. And guess which senator has the most money in political contributions and campaign contributions from oil and natural gas? Take a wild guess. First two don't count. I'll give you three. Senator Cruz. So this is the president of ERCOT that's about to be shown. During his interview, I believe it was on CNN. And ERCOT is the Energy Reliability Council of Texas. It's basically who's in charge of Texas's power grid. And we're going to listen to him try and explain why this went the way that it went and what should be done now.
System.
The governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, says that just days before, you assured him the grid was ready, that you assured him that ERCOT could handle this coming storm. Here's what he said yesterday.
They said 5 days before the winter storm hit, the ERCOT CEO assured ERCOT, and I quote, "We're ready for the cold temperatures coming our way."
Why did you say you were ready?
Well, when ERCOT says it's ready, what ERCOT needs to do is warn generators, warn transmission owners that we see a big event happening. And we did that in the week before the storm. We don't own the power generation or the transmission lines. We're more the traffic cop or the air traffic control on the system. So we were warning that we were seeing these conditions coming, and we knew that we may have to implement the rotating outages that ended up coming. And as we saw the supply get lower and the demand get higher on Sunday night, those rotating outages were what we implemented. Yeah. That's what we drill on, and that's what we prepare for. Unfortunately, those have terrible outcomes for people when they have to last a long time. But that's the preparation we did to take that action effectively before we saw a much, much worse outcome.
I just don't think that a warning is the same as readiness, and that Texans consider being in the dark and without heat for days as being ready. That just doesn't sound like you were ready. And in terms of being unprecedented, I hear you. It was a horrible storm. But in 2011, you also had a horrible winter storm. And back then, there was a lot of talk about having to winterize the system. And it doesn't seem as though it was done.
Well, the challenge that the system had Sunday night as we went into these outages was, as we saw the spiking demand, the supply on the system did see a lot of losses. Generators, because of reasons that had to do primarily with the storm coming in, were not able to provide power to the grid. So certainly that had to do with why we had to end up calling these outages in such a
how's
large
that readiness,
magnitude.
I guess is my question. How is that being ready?
I think that's something that everyone in the utility industry is going to have to look at and determine how we manage systems that are this intense in the winter season. Certainly that there's going to be tremendous amount of assessment and review of what we can do to make this never happen again. But I think our role and what we feel like we took care of, although there was a lot of trouble for everyone in the state in this, was to be sitting here today saying that most Texans are being able to be restored. Power is going to be back on as normal, and we're not talking to you about a much longer, a much more devastating blackout.
So, but I mean, are you saying that this was a success story on some level?
No, this is not a success story. I think we understand, we're in the electric business. We know that electricity is essential to civilization. And it's awful for us in the business to see systems that can't make electricity available to everyone. So no, I think we're going to have to look at this very carefully and understand how we can manage the events better as an entire industry. So not a success, but there were worse outcomes, as bad as these were, that we needed to step in and prevent.
The CEO of ERCOT, the Energy Reliability Council of Texas. The industry is going to be looking at this to see what can be done to make sure it doesn't happen again. Not a direct quote, but a paraphrase. I don't have a degree in energy production. I don't have a degree in energy regulation. I'm not a president or CEO of an energy reliability council or a, big old power exchange, one of 3 in the United States of America. But I have a very simple idea here. Winterize your damn equipment. This isn't hard. You don't need a committee to figure it out. As the reporter pointed out, you should have figured that out after the last storm in 2011. ERCOT was prepared. By prepared, he means the rolling blackouts that lasted for days was what they were prepared to do. So if you're comfortable with this down in the state of Texas, keep voting for Republicans. This is what you're getting. The Democrats are the ones trying to help you here. Now, let's see if Mr. President and CEO of ERCOT thinks that it might be time to join the federal grid, and have to follow those regulations.
If the whole state's electrical grid can go down in a winter storm, is it time to join the rest of the country's electrical grids?
I'm going to bet
and
no.
not be just Texas independent if this is going to keep happening?
Well, that really wouldn't have helped us in this storm. Our neighbors who power could have come in from were having similar problems to us. The power grids to the east and to the west and that are in Texas were having similar issues. So I don't think
But nowhere was as bad as Texas, Mr. Magnus. I mean, nowhere was as bad as Texas. You could have borrowed, you could move electricity around. That's how it's set up. Oklahoma, which was also hit with this same storm, did not have the same problems. This was a Texas-specific problem.
Well, and I think what was Texas-specific was not something that necessarily could have been managed by not having a Texas electric grid. In fact, the biggest problem has to do with what I was describing before, that we saw the supply not be able to keep up. And once the supply couldn't keep up, we had to take actions to restore stability to the system. And those actions are obviously going to be reviewed and examined very closely by us, by everyone else. And all those questions that are arising about what comes next, those are decisions for policymakers to make. We defer to them on all of those. And we'll see what policymakers want to do to prepare us to never see this kind of event again.
So let me boil that down for you, because he said very little with a lot of words. The question was, is it time for Texas to join the federal grid? And his answer was, no, because it wouldn't have helped. And the follow-up question was, Oklahoma and states near you were hit by the same damn storm. They were able to bring in power from elsewhere. This is a Texas problem right now. And then his answer was, no, that was us having our own grid isn't the problem. The problem is we didn't have enough supply to meet the demand from people trying to stay warm. Now, call me crazy, but if you were connected to the other grids in the country, you could bring in the supply from outside of your state to help meet that demand. So being on the same grid as the rest of the country would have increased your supply as your demand went up. I don't know why it took him 2 paragraphs to try to dance around the subject, but the answer is quite clearly yes. Texas needs to be connected to the rest of the country, so when they get hit by a very intense storm that they're not ready for, and that their supply is not going to meet their demand, they can bring in more supply from other parts of the country. I don't have a logistics degree. I don't have a degree in power management. I'm not the CEO of some Energy Reliability Council of Texas. But this does not seem like I need those degrees or those qualifications to figure out. Now, ignoring all the frozen houses and water damage and citizens who died, because Republicans want you to get really good at that, judging off the ignoring COVID stuff too. Let's say you were one of the lucky ones. One of the ones who kept power on through all of this, through some miracle. So your house didn't freeze. And you didn't have to run away to Cancun, Mexico to get warm. Let's say you were one of the lucky ones. How's life looking for you right now?
If the whole state's electrical grid can go down in a winter storm, is it time to join?
As power turns back on in Texas, there is relief. But for some like Ty Williams,
you're being held hostage and you can't do anything about it.
It's short-lived. During this winter storm, his electric bill for 3 meters climbed to more than $17,000. It usually hovers around $600 a month.
How in the world can anyone pay that?
You see, Williams is one of many who reached out to WFAA about their power bill soaring the last few days. And if you're not on a fixed contract with your energy provider and instead pay month to month based on current market prices like he does, you could be in the same boat because the Public Utility Commission of Texas raised prices to incentivize plants to produce more power. Jason Wheeler showed us Thursday night.
At one point, 1 megawatt went from $50 to about $9,000.
Yeah, no wonder Williams's bill was so high. So what do you do if you're in this rut?
First of all, don't panic.
Krista Castaneda is an attorney specializing in oil and gas. Step one, she says, turn off autopay on your bill if it isn't already. That gives you time to call your provider, understand your bill, and protest.
Have patience and gather your information.
Castaneda also suggests calling your state officials. Representative Brooks Landgraf has already written a letter to the PUC admonishing them for raising prices and asks for it to rescind rate hikes on electric bills. And Representatives Justin Holland and Jeff Leach also plan to write letters. So this whole ordeal,
and that's the downside of a deregulated market,
may not be sorted out just yet. In Dallas, I'm Matt Howerton.
That's the downside to a deregulated market. You damn straight it is. And this is why I've said countless times, there are some businesses, some services that are not best served by the capitalism model. We don't cross-shop fire departments. If your house is on fire, you don't get to call around and figure out which one's the cheapest, who has the best response time, which one's going to put the fire out the fastest, which one's going to cause the least amount of water damage. So we don't run them as a business. Not many people, even in the state of Texas, have a whole lot of options for power companies. And who the hell can afford a $17,000 bill? It would have been cheaper to take a vacation to Mexico. Join Senator Cruz. I mean, if he was a savvy businessman and investor, that's what he would have done. I guess Senator Cruz was trying to help his constituents, lead by example. Not everything we run in this country needs to be run like a business and for a profit. We don't run the military like a business. We don't run it for a profit. We don't run police departments like a business. We don't expect them to turn a profit. We don't run fire departments like a business. We don't expect them to turn a profit. Why are we running energy companies like a business? Why are we expecting them to turn a profit in sub-freezing temperatures when people are dying and pipes are busting and they can't even provide reliable service to the majority of their state? But if you're one of the lucky ones, you too can have a $17,000 bill. And don't worry, turn off the auto pay just in case you have $17,000 in your checking account. You don't want that coming right out. And some government officials are going to write a letter for you. Not new regulation, not tie it in to the rest of the country's energy grid, not winterize the equipment properly like we talked about doing back in 2011, the last time something like this happened. No, we're just going to write a letter. If you run it as a business and you put profits over a foundation of modern civilization, I believe was the quote from the CEO of ERCOT, the Energy Reliability Council of Texas, the guys who failed on this whole thing, then when the grid starts shutting down, of course the prices are going to skyrocket. And when you can't bring in increased supply from elsewhere, and your supply goes down and your demand goes up, if you're running it like a business, of course the price is going to skyrocket. So the answer, the one they're not going to tell you, is it doesn't need to be run like a business. Run it as a service, just like we do the post office, just like we do the fire department, just like we do the police departments, just like we do the military. Not everything is best served by capitalism. Because I would be willing to bet that there was not a single consumer, not one, in that situation that could decide that, hey, my electric service is shit right now. Let me call up another energy company and get power from them instead right now, tonight. Nobody could do that. And capitalism works when you have informed consumers who can make choices between competition. How many people before this week in the state of Texas, or hell, in the entire country, knew that Texas was on its own power grid and couldn't get power from elsewhere? Could make a choice about which energy company they wanted to deal with right then and there? Traffic cone. We'll get to you in a second. Looks like we might have a Trump supporter in. But that's my case for why you should run energy companies, utility companies, and I would argue internet service providers as services instead of businesses. Stream chat box will catch up in a minute. We've got Traffic Cone who's saying Donnie Big Nuts was the best president ever. What makes you say that? Jobs. Just jobs. That's it. Anything else good he did? Because we can address the jobs thing here in a minute. Real tough man leadership. No one messed with us. Okay. So that's two. You got a third one? I want to get the full case for Trump here. I don't want to cut you off. And I don't want to be talking over you, my friend. Passed amazing laws. Okay, I'm going to start addressing jobs. I'm going to request that you give me an example of a couple of those amazing laws he passed. Worked hard and is a true patriot. Okay. So by jobs, my question is, are you referring to he grew the economy more than any previous president? Or are you saying he kept jobs in the United States instead of letting them go overseas? What specifically are you referring to? Let's do the jobs bit first. I'm an anti-American and a commie. Okay, here we go. So, I served in the United States military. I was an infantry officer. I love my country, probably more than you do. And if you can't have a civil conversation with somebody from across the aisle, then we're kind of wasting our time. I was hoping for more substantive of a discussion than this. So what kind of jobs, Traffic Cone? What do you mean by jobs? $8 million new jobs a year under him. Okay, under President Trump. So you're referring to new job creation. And put our miners back to work. Okay. Does he also get credit for all the job losses and the economic failures under COVID? I think it's hilarious that you think he's a God-loving Christian. We can address that in a minute. I ask a question. Does he also get credit for the economic failures and the people who are struggling and the people on unemployment because of our disastrous response to COVID? Quite literally one of the worst in the world in response to COVID, which obviously affects the economy when nobody's working. I'm not asking whether he created COVID, Traffic. I'm asking about his response to COVID or lack thereof. I agree it's not his fault that COVID exists. There you and I agree. But if my house is on fire, the fire itself might not have been my fault. Me not calling a fire department, me not using a fire extinguisher to spray on it, me not pouring a glass of water on it, those are all things I could have done that probably would have helped the situation. Operation Warp Speed, have you ever heard of it? Or you got War Speed, but yes. Yes, I've heard of Operation Warp Speed. However, the first two companies out with vaccines said that Warp Speed was not responsible for their development of the vaccine. I believe it was Pfizer that was one of the first ones out that said Warp Speed had nothing to do with it. For those who are unaware, Operation Warp Speed was basically throwing money at pharma companies to help develop a vaccine. But again, that was not my question. My question was, does he also have responsibility for the numbers under COVID? Can you answer that question, please? Because if he gets credit for the good, I mean, surely he gets some of the credit for the bad, too. No, Congress gets that blame. So the president has, in a national emergency, like a global pandemic, nothing he can do. It's all on Congress. That's what you believe. Correct, comrade. We have checks and balances. So I'm not a communist, but okay, if it makes you feel better and lets you sleep at night, that's all well and good. So Trump gets credit for any good thing in your mind, and any bad thing that goes wrong. The leader of the country is not responsible for any of the bad stuff. That's Congress's fault. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. Worked hard and is a true patriot was one of your next claims. Trump took more vacations and had more golf days than any previous president in history, so that one's out. Real tough man leadership. No one messed with us. Who was messing with us before? China. When did China mess with us prior to President Trump? They know Democrats are weak, sissy, beta male cucks. Okay, well, learn how to spell the word weak for one. Okay, so China killed us on trade. You do realize that the trade deficit didn't get any better under President Trump. He started a trade war with China, and then nothing happened, right? Besides the fact that a bunch of people lost a bunch of money. And as for trade deficits, I run a trade deficit with the grocery store every week, 2 weeks, brother. Trade deficit's kind of irrelevant. Traffic Cone, I can understand that you're voting Trump in 2024. I'm trying to figure out why. You don't have to keep telling me what you believe. I understand that you're a Trump supporter. I'm asking for specific claims here. So what else has China done to us that Trump somehow in your mind solved? They have the best infrastructure, tech, military, and economy in the world. Dems let that happen, and it's sad. Okay, so for starters, I would disagree that they have the best military. Pre-COVID, we still had the strongest economy in the world. Republicans under Richard Nixon are who normalized relations with China. Republicans under Nixon are who started trading with China. Republicans are the ones who brought them into the fold. And how many multi-millionaire and billionaire and Fortune 500 CEOs do you know that you think are progressives and Democrats that are over there doing business with China? These are decisions being made by capitalism and by Republicans for the most part, though admittedly you'll surely find a few Democrats in there supporting those policies, to make money. I don't think China's great. I think there's a huge problem with China. I do agree with you that they're a threat. I don't see, in your words, how Donnie Big Nuts helped anything whatsoever. I see that he threw a temper tantrum over a trade deficit instead of passing any laws that would actually affect anything. And then, immediately after we fired our best non-military shot at China, because there's not enough support in this country to go to war with China over anything, and there's certainly not enough support in the world to go to war with China over anything. Immediately after firing that shot, China starts cracking down on Hong Kong and rattling sabers about Taiwan again. Because what the hell else are we going to do to them? Short of war. I also see Donnie Big Nuts, in your words, pulling us out of the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, that was a trade agreement with us and the rest of the Asian countries in the Pacific that would keep China more contained. When we step out of an agreement like that, China, being the largest regional economic power, has huge influence because we have created a power vacuum. And who do you think is going to step in on that? I also see Trump pulling us out of the WHO, the World Health Organization, and not paying our bill, which thankfully President Biden has put us back into. When you pull out of an organization like that, and China steps up and starts paying the bill, whose water do you think that the WHO is going to start carrying? Who's going to have more influence? If China is your concern, and I'm not saying you're wrong to be concerned with China, then I don't see how throwing a temper tantrum, removing us from an organization treaty agreement that was trying to contain China economically, and removing us from the World Health Organization that was trying to, that would allow China to have more influence again, is something that helps contain China. I see a lot of bluster and a lot of bullshit, but I don't see anything of real substance. Dems are obsessed with the NWO. I didn't even mention the NWO. TPP was a scam. We gave money to those Asians with no respect nor return. How is TPP a scam? It's a trade agreement. Man, go take Econ 101. If the grocery store gives you 50 cents off on a gallon of milk, they're giving you money. That doesn't make it a scam. It's to get your butt in the door. China pays them backdoor and they sell secrets to them. Who is them? Give me a specific example and instance. And what secrets? Okay, so all Dems are selling secrets to China. Shit, I need to let my girlfriend know. Apparently China owes me some money that I don't know about. Schumer, Pelosi, and Biden. So the top three Dems you can think of, you think they're out there selling secrets to China for dollars. Okay. Let me just pick the top three Republicans I can think of and say they're selling secrets to the Russians. Not provide any evidence, not, provide any data backing this up. Just pull it out of thin air. Look, brother, I know you believe all this stuff, but you seriously need to get some, evidence and data. And how come when I specifically point to things that Trump did that make no sense if containing China is your goal, you just want to start, oh, well, Biden's selling secrets to the Chinese. Oh, can't win that topic. Now we got to bounce over to the election being stolen, by the way. Hunter Biden's laptop? Is that what you're referring to? Please tell me it's Hunter Biden's laptop. Please. Hunter Biden's laptop, we don't even know was Hunter Biden's. It was identified by a guy who is legally blind. And the way he identified it is because it had a sticker on it from the Beau Biden Foundation. Nobody has been allowed to see any of the emails that were supposedly on it. The New York Post wouldn't release it to any other news organization to verify. And Tucker Carlson on Fox News said it was going to be some big thing as soon as he had the data. But the emails that were on Hunter Biden's laptop, as identified by the blind computer shop guy, literally legally blind computer shop owner who has a previous history of going to Trump rallies, mind you, no bias there. All the emails that were going to blow this wide open, Tucker Carlson was going to go over on Fox News. But they literally got lost in the mail. That was Tucker Carlson's excuse. Emails, electronic mail, got lost in the mail. Now, I understand you can put emails on a hard copy on a USB drive, one of these things, and you can send it through the mail. But wouldn't it be just as easy to click send? Forward? Oh, and those emails that got lost in the mail happened to be the only copies anybody ever had. And Tucker Carlson afterwards said, hey guys, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. We need to move on to something more important. It's called the internet. I read all the emails. They're all over the internet. You read articles online that nobody's managed to verify, as identified by a legally blind shop owner who backed up on his identification. This wouldn't be enough to convict a high school principal of having a relationship with a student. If a legally blind guy in your town said that the principal at your high school was having an affair or having a relationship with a teenage girl, and he knew it because he was legally blind, and somebody dropped off a computer in another state from where he was at the time, and nobody else got to look at the laptop, and he knew it was that principal's laptop only based on a school sticker that was on the outside of the laptop, everybody would laugh. You want this to be true, but there's not enough evidence here to prove anything close to it being true. The Green New Deal caused a panic in Texas. The Green New Deal hasn't been voted on or passed yet, traffic cone. So please explain to me how it's responsible for already existing power infrastructure. I'm guessing you missed the first part of the show because that makes absolutely no sense. Focusing on Tucker or the provenance of the laptop is a poor dodge and deflection, avoiding the questions around Hunter. It was something. Okay, so Hunter's under investigation for corruption. I'm not saying you don't get to investigate him. I'm saying the laptop, which somebody else brought up, is hilariously bad evidence. But thanks for the comment, the next man's. I'm guessing this guy is a teacher. No, I'm not a teacher. Pictures and video are bad evidence. Pictures and video are bad evidence when you don't release them to anybody else to confirm whether they're legitimate or not. Also, oh, caller, you just dropped off. We were about to get to you. If you can release it, like if it's accurate, real information, I've got no problem with everybody else verifying it. Pictures and bad evidence, or pictures are bad evidence when they're pictures of emails that you can't verify were actually written or where they came from. You know, I mean, hell, I can type up some fake emails and post them online right now. It's not hard. Feels like the reflexive center speaks, providing cover for Biden family wrongdoing. I'm not providing cover. I just told you if you want to investigate Hunter, investigate away. I'm not exactly sure how to say your name, so I'm just going to call you Fixar. So, Fixar, you saw pictures and vids and emails. Did you have anything proving that it was back to Hunter Biden specifically? Because again, I can provide pictures and stuff all day long. It doesn't prove that it's Hunter Biden's. Traffic cone girth, and that's your problem. It's your sports team. It has nothing to do with policies for you. I will happily vote for a Republican president the minute you run a Teddy Roosevelt again. You run somebody who wants to regulate big business, break up monopolies, look out for the working man. Hey, I'll vote for your Republican candidate all day long. When you want to run corruption, when you want to run based on lies, on stuff you can't prove, on stuff you can't let anybody else verify, that's a whole different ballgame. You saw pictures of him jamming his whatever down his sister-in-law's mouth, but you guess it might not be him or her. Are you serious? I haven't seen that. But honestly, I really don't care. That has zero to do with corruption. Might be a little not my thing, but it's irrelevant. Bill Clinton got a blowjob. I could care less. The laptop story is significant in the censorist response from the tech-dominated social media companies and the lapdog corporate media establishment. The fact that it couldn't be shared and discussed to protect Biden's election chances is a threat to open debate. When every media company tried to go verify it, they wouldn't release the information to the media companies. So, of course, they quit covering it. If you can't prove that it's real, then it's not news. I'm sorry. Free speech has always been censored in that regard. You don't get to go run into a theater and yell fire without any evidence or proof of fire. And if you do, you're held liable for the consequences. The part where he is on China's payroll seems a little bit suspect. I agree. That's why I'm fine with him being investigated. Traffic cone, we've already gone over this. The history is that the Republicans opened the normalized trade with China. You need to go back and learn some history. That's down to Richard Nixon. You can't prove you are watching a hologram right now, so I don't exist unless I prove it. Are we going down the philosophy of solipsism here, where nothing's real and you're living in the Matrix? Because if that's the case, why do you care what I think, and why should I care what you think? Because I'm just a figment of your imagination. We talked about Russiagate for 4 years with no evidence and payoff. Let's not pretend there's not a double standard here. Okay, so here's the difference between like the election and Hunter Biden's laptop and Russiagate. Okay, if you guys on the conservative side had multiple members of Biden's campaign staff pleading guilty to election fraud, when we ask you guys where's the evidence of election fraud, you go, here it is, right here. The head of Biden's campaign admitted guilt. Yeah, that happened with Trump and Russiagate. Just because you didn't watch it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Traffic cone, there are two genders. I have no idea what that has to do with anything about what we're discussing. If genders scare you and intimidate you and make you feel like less of a real man, that's between you and whatever problems you have. Take it up with your therapist, brother. I don't think you know what the word commie means. And I've already told you I'm not one, but whatever lets you sleep at night, my friend. Oh, sorry, I missed your reply, Fixar. I started this shit. No, I didn't start a hard solipsism path where I said nothing is real and we live in the Matrix. I believe in skepticism, which means that when there's enough evidence, I will believe something is true. It's not my fault that the people that claim to have Hunter Biden's laptop both happen to be legally blind, backed off the statement that they could visually identify who dropped it off, okay, and then wouldn't release any of the evidence and data on said laptop to other agencies to verify. If they had released this stuff to, I don't know, Fox News, CNBC, CNN, New York Times, New York Post, Breitbart, I mean, you can pick 10, 15 sources, whatever you want to, and said, hey, you know, this is what we've got. We broke the story, but everybody else can look at it and verify it. Then it wouldn't be a conspiracy theory at that point. At this point, it really looks like a conspiracy theory. There's not enough evidence here. I'm not saying I won't believe no matter what. I'm saying you need to prove your case. You suspect you're more left than I am. You might be. The arrest and guilty pleas around Trump were never shown to be related to Russia at all. They were all garden variety money laundering and fraud. I think you need to go re-research that. True, only what you believe is real. You dismiss anything you don't want to believe. That is exactly the opposite of what I just said. I would love to believe that I have $1 billion in my bank account. The evidence does not suggest that I have $1 billion in my bank account. If I only wanted to believe what I wanted to believe, I would go start spending my $1 billion, and reality would come crashing in very quickly when everybody else saw the evidence that I did not, in fact, have $1 billion. Evidence is what matters here. It's not my fault that you don't have good evidence. If Fixar, you can send it to me. You might want to shoot it to me through email, theleftSpeaks@gmail.com. I'll have to screen that, obviously, based off some of the stuff that you said was on there. But I'm going to be honest with you. If there's nothing proving that it was actually his laptop and actually on his laptop, then you're kind of wasting your time. Skewing the facts in my favor, I'm blindly letting my love for Biden prove his innocence. Could you imagine the outcry if a Republican did that? I've already said investigate Hunter. That's fine. I'm not convicting him before I see the results of the investigation. I'm waiting on the evidence. I just told Fixar I would look at his source. If he can't prove that it's from Hunter's laptop, that's not my fault. The fact that you want to believe it doesn't make it true. I'm sorry. As for love for Biden, I think Biden is a return to normal. I'm more of a Bernie Sanders, AOC, or Elizabeth Warren type Democrat. I identify as a progressive, but whatever. It's all down to individual policies. You're still claiming a Russia connection to Manafort, Gates, or Flynn, or any of those jerks. Where there's evidence for your claim, Mueller certainly couldn't find it. Mueller got a lot of guilty pleas. Mueller had a lot of successful investigations. Mueller specifically said that the evidence did not exonerate the president, because if he could exonerate the president, he would have. And then the next step, or that he was barred by Department of Justice policy, and that the next step is necessarily political. Bro, I'm not on Biden's D. Just because you're on Trump's D doesn't mean I'm on Biden's. I voted against him in the primary. And then I voted against Trump, and Biden was my alternative that was actually stood a chance of getting elected. The current head of the FBI is a guy named Wray, the same exact guy that was head of the law firm negotiating Hunter's deal with the Chinese. Guess who got to keep his job when Joe Biden was elected? The same guy that had the laptop for a year. He must be doing a really good job for Joe to keep a Trump appointment around. So you're saying that Trump appointed Wray, who was in on covering for Hunter Biden throughout the entire election. So Trump must be part of the deep state too, brother. Obviously, he's on the Chinese payroll. I mean, he's in on it from your own words. The guilty pleas had nothing to do with Russia. You're dodging wildly. The Mueller investigation was into Russian influence during the 2016 election. These guilty pleas were related to Mueller's investigation. Just because you want to point to a specific charge and say, oh, it didn't specifically say, doesn't mean that it wasn't tied into the Russia investigation. If I break into somebody's house and shoot them and they die, I'm going to be arrested for murder. If Russia paid me to do it, I'm still going to be arrested for murder. It doesn't change the fact that Russia would have paid me to do it. The Mueller investigation specifically said, Mueller himself said, that he could not exonerate the president. So try again. Wray was appointed before any of the laptop stuff became public. I'm sure Trump had no idea Wray and Biden were that close. So Trump's just completely incompetent and unable to fix his mistakes. When he realizes that Wray is on the Chinese payroll, oh, come on, man. Trump's a better businessman than that. If there's some massive national conspiracy here to cover Hunter Biden's laptop, one thing I do know about Trump is he gonna find a way to get paid. My claims have no basis, legally blind. Are you referring to the I can pull that up for you. Standing in his shop on Wednesday, McIsaac admitted that he was unable to confirm that it had actually been Hunter Biden who dropped off the laptop because he is legally blind. There's your man right there. So yeah, my claims do have basis. And you can check it out on other sources if CBS's left-wing media hoax. If that makes you feel better. It's not my fault McIsaac is legally blind. I'm not making this shit up. Try again. I'm not attacking the man. I'm saying the man made a visual identification and he's legally blind. That's a fact. Now, he could have very easily made backups of this entire laptop, which is supposedly where this evidence comes from, right? Because he gave the actual laptop supposedly to the FBI and released this to multiple news agencies. That would have been fine. Not being able to exonerate is not a real legal standard and an indication of the political nature of the investigation. That's exactly what Mueller said. He said that he would like to have exonerated the president, but he could not, and the next step was political. I agree. It should have gone to impeachment. Is that why he tried for a year to contact Hunter to pick it up? He just randomly picked a name out of the phone book. There's a history of the guy being a devout Trump supporter. You know what? I've got Don Jr.'s laptop with all kinds of crazy shit on it, and I've been trying to call him for 6 months, but the motherfucker just ain't returned my calls. Like, come on, guys. Really? That's what's evidence to you? That a guy says he tried to call a guy? Really? Impeachment of what violation in the Mueller situation? This sounds like bad faith. None of my arguments are made in bad faith, or at least I don't intend to. We may disagree, but I'm always going to at least listen to your point. That's why the number's toll free. Anybody can call in whenever they want to. As long as you can maintain a civil discussion, you are more than welcome to call in. If you can't, I'll just hang up on you. It's that simple. Well, he had the motive of getting paid for his work, but yeah, I guess he had no real reason to try and get a hold of a guy he did the work for. You haven't proven that that's the guy he did the work for. You've got a legally blind guy who says that this is the guy that he did the work for, who's not providing any evidence that this is indeed his laptop or that he was trying to, do this work for Hunter in the first place. Oh, looks like next man decided to call in. Hold on just a second. We'll get you on the air.
Hello?
Hey, brother, you're live.
Hey, man, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
A little... Good. I just wanted to comment a little bit of... Good. Sorry, one second. Let me
yeah, you're going to want to mute the stream. No problem.
Thank you. Thanks for having an open forum. I appreciate that. That is cool, and that you're open to hearing ideas that might clash with your own.
Oh, absolutely. And on that note, before I let you dive into it, if you ever, or for any of the viewers, if you want to send in sources for me to review for the next week or anything like that, you can always go to the website, www.theleftspeaks.com. You can email me, you can message me directly from there, and I'll review them. I try and keep videos under 30 minutes or so that way I don't have to chop up your position too badly. So if you need to send in timestamps or anything like that, you're more than welcome.
Cool. I basically, it had come up in the course of the conversation.
As
that
power
you're
turns.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, I was just trying to make a contrast with how the media at large and basically the public dealt with what I would consider you're basically claiming that the Hunter laptop story should not have the validity that it is given by some of our friends on the right. I'm just
let me
putting
clarify
that up against what I would also consider.
I'm
Okay,
claiming
go
that
ahead.
the Hunter Biden story does not, the laptop specifically, not referring to the investigation, does not have enough evidence at this point to be taken as seriously. Okay. So if y'all produce the evidence, or if this gentleman produces the evidence, you'll have me right on board with you. Because I'm not in favor of corruption.
I understand that you're open to it.
Okay.
But I'm just saying there's a notable disconnect in the evidence that we were ever shown for what I would basically consider a 4-year ongoing conspiracy theory of some sort of nefarious Trump-Russia connection, which really paid off in no way. Mueller, of all the people that he did charge, none of them were shown to have any direct connection to Russia in the way that we were all led to believe. And essentially, the problem is that the entire Russia obsession resulted in the Democrats and being able to basically dodge their responsibility and not have for whiffing and failing in the 2016 election. And it also allowed them to basically use the boogeyman of Russia rather than deal with their own shortcomings. Furthermore, it also basically just aided elements of the national security state to have a pretext to continually crack down on social media. So, in effect, that project was pretty damaging to the actual left, and basically served the interest of establishment Democrats. So because they were able to just avoid responsibility for interfering, for the way they screwed over Bernie in the primary, and it allowed them to not actually have to respond to the activist base or any downward pressure within the party because of the boogeyman of Trump and Russia. And that there's just a complete double standard as to how that story is being treated versus any other story, because that's like an officially approved conspiracy theory at this point. So that disconnect is pretty notable to me.
Okay, so you said a whole bunch. I'm going to try and parse some of it up for you. So let me know if I misrepresent anything or misunderstood anything that you said. So
sure.
The main thing I'm going to focus on is the difference between the Russia investigation and the Hunter Biden laptop claims. Okay. A lot of the rest of it to me was like your perceived consequences of the Russia investigation. And I don't think all of them were off base. Some of them I'll agree with, some of them I'll disagree with. I do think that, Democrats may have used it as an excuse to explain away 2016 when Hillary Clinton was just a shit candidate that had huge unfavorables. Okay. So there you and I can tend to agree on a lot of things. That's irrelevant to whether or not the investigation was justified or not, in my opinion. That's irrelevant to the evidence. We know that Obama approached McConnell in the Senate beforehand to come out with a bipartisan statement saying that Russia was, they had credible intelligence, actionable intelligence in military terms, that Russia was interfering with the 2016 election. So this is pre-existing, right? This is not just oh shit, Trump won, we're going to come up with an excuse as to why. This happened beforehand. And again, these are, not just one person saying, okay. They tried to handle it bipartisanly, going to the Republicans and saying, hey, we need to make a joint statement against this. And that was shot down by McConnell. Okay. Then there was an investigation by Mueller, a Republican. So again, that's about as bipartisan as you can get into this whole thing. And there were multiple members of Trump's campaign campaign staff that were pleading guilty to various charges, all in relation to the Russia investigation. I'm assuming you agree with me.
No, that's actually not true, though. They were not. The things that those people were charged with were not in any way connected. I mean, they were basically, you could say they were a result of the investigation.
Okay, so they were connected to the Russia investigation.
No, but they were not connected to Russia. They were all, like, for Paul Manafort, for example, right? He was doing, dirty, he was doing money laundering essentially and committing fraud for personal gain. They may have tried to approach him to try to flip him, to try to use him to turn states against Trump because they may have suspected something. But obviously, that was fruitless. It did not work, and it was never connected to Russia. You could say the same with Gates or Flynn or Papadopoulos or any of these people. So you're trying to leave the hanging up implication that because they were somehow there were charges that were the result of an investigation that was publicly claimed to be related to Russia, therefore that's proof of something. I'm saying that's totally disingenuous to make that claim.
No, I'm saying there were multiple convictions and guilty pleas out of the Russia investigation. And as Chat pointed out, Trump asked Russia to interfere live on public television.
Okay, so if that's the again, there's still zero evidence of actually any effect that they had. So
okay, hold on, pause. Yeah. So zero effect that they had is different than whether or not they attempted to interfere. So if you're going to concede,
and there's zero evidence that they did or that it had any actual effect. And that was not. So I mean, the only thing you could possibly point to was some money spent on some Facebook posts, perhaps half of which actually was spent after the election. So like I don't know if you recall the meme of like a really jacked up Bernie with a rainbow flag, right? If that was the effect of the Russia investigation, right? Is that supposed to be what we were obsessed and focused on for 4 years, or that Trump said Trump said a lot of like silly things during speeches, and so is that supposed to be an indication that all of this actually has a basis and is true and was worth spending the time that we did on it, rather than actually trying to like affect left policy or trying to actually do anything like positive for the country?
No, I'm saying you can do both at the same time. I'm not saying do a Russia investigation in lieu of, raising the minimum wage or a new Voting Rights Act, since the conservative Supreme Court decided to strike down some of that stuff. I'm not saying in lieu of that. I'm saying you can do both at the same time.
If you could recall the level of breathless hype that story got in the media for 4 years, pretty much, that blocked out examination of any other stories of like import, or many other stories of import that would have actually at least given the media to the opportunity to examine really any other aspect of like our modern lives or wrongdoing by politicians in our country. Instead, it was a major distraction, and it proved completely fruitless. It was a dead end, and yet I don't think we're going to be able to move forward as a country until we reconcile that, until we come to terms with the fact that it was a dead end, and effectively we've been played, and it also has extremely negative effects that we are now suffering for, as far as like the way that it was basically used as a pretext to shut down open debate on issues that they don't want to discuss.
How does it shut down open debate, man? You and I are talking about Hunter Biden's laptop right now. We're live streaming everywhere. I mean, you're streaming to Facebook, you're streaming to YouTube, you're streaming to Twitch. I mean, we're quite literally everywhere.
No, how many have you been following at all? How many like accounts or like basically essentially on social media there's been because prompted by hyperbolic, unsubstantiated fear about Russian interference, that's been used as a pretext in the last few years to censor speech on social media platforms, to get rid of any accounts that were basically outside of like the mainstream narrative spectrum.
Such as what?
That affects both
Give me an
left
example,
and the
because
right.
this is completely unrelated to how, the difference between evidence for Russia and the evidence for Hunter Biden's laptop. I don't see how the Russia connection is being used to censor Hunter Biden's laptop. This is where you're losing me entirely. Okay.
Again, you're getting caught up on the
case,
Hunter Biden's laptop thing, and I'm sorry if I'm going too far from the topic that you're currently talking about in the show.
No.
But
I'm going. Hold on.
Contrast.
Pause. So your call-in said that you wanted to go over the Mueller investigation and how it was treated differently than the allegations about Hunter's laptop. Okay, so that's what I'm basing what I'm talking to you on, is what you went through the screening process for. Okay, I understand you don't like the Mueller investigation, but in one case, I have actionable intelligence from the government, and I have Trump on live television, and then I have multiple convictions related to the Russia investigation. You can dispute whether it's about Russia or ties directly to Russia or not, but it all came out of that investigation, and guilty pleas from Trump's campaign staff. On the other side, related to Hunter Biden's laptop, I have a legally blind Trump supporter who'd been to multiple Trump rallies prior to finding this laptop, visually identifying Hunter Biden, and not releasing any of the evidence to any other news sources to verify or validate. Can you see why, from my side, these two things look very different? That's all I'm asking.
They are different. The issue at play, right, is how they were either embraced or rejected as a double standard by media at large. One was trumpeted, amplified, and twittered and basically talked about endlessly for years with the zero evidence. We've still not had any proof. There's been no proof ever put forward that, for example, the Russians even stole the emails that we're talking about, right? We've never actually been provided with proof of that, even throughout Mueller's investigation. So I understand what you're trying to say about the laptop, and I honestly don't necessarily want to quibble over it, but I'm just saying the standards of proof and the level of scrutiny and discussion in the media is completely disconnected. And it's also an indicator of different agendas at play.
Let me adjust chat for just a second. Marcus, you can jump in. JS, political speech has repercussions. He's not innocent just because he may have been joking. I tend to agree. Marcus, I don't do three-way debates, but you can call in with a response if you want to. JS, Trump asked and Russia engaged in a mass disinformation campaign. Okay, he's talking to somebody else in chat. Okay.
All right. Again, I feel like we're just retreading the same area over and over again.
I think from my point of view that you're frustrated with the Russia investigation overall because in your mind it doesn't have enough evidence to substantiate it. Is that fair thus far?
Well, no. I mean, even that characterization in my mind, I feel is a little bit.
Well, yeah, I disagree with you, so I'm trying to put myself in your shoes.
Well, again, there is no evidence that has been produced by Mueller. Even you're talking before of, I cannot exonerate him. Again, is an indication of that it was a completely politicized investigation, and so essentially I feel like you're clinging to this, but you're not acknowledging that it really, even though there were charges for money laundering, et cetera, that has nothing to do with the actual issue at topic that we were told to obsess about, that we were told that this would be addressing for years.
Have you actually read the Mueller report?
I mean, part and not in whole, not in totality, but yeah, I definitely read sections of it.
Okay.
And I haven't seen anything that indicates any of the stuff that you're sort of implying, but you can't actually.
None of the stuff related to individual one.
Say because it's not there.
None of the stuff related to individual one who was unnamed has anything to do with. It doesn't raise any red flags for you justifying an investigation. Nothing.
What's for the sake of your audience? What's your allegation about that?
I think Trump was open to accepting help from Russia to win an election. It's not the first time we've seen that out of Republican presidential candidates. It's not the first time we've seen Republican presidential candidates mess with foreign nationals or foreign nations to help achieve election. It's not the first time we've seen Republican presidential candidates try to cheat to win an election.
We could speculate endlessly about that, and obviously we've gotten pretty good at it because we've speculated for 4 years. But again, it's just total speculation with zero.
I would advise you
zero backing.
I would advise you to go read the actual Mueller report, the full thing.
I would advise you to reread it if you still are under this misapprehension about the results of it, because clear. And
but at
again,
a minimum,
and the fact that you still have that perception, and the fact that many centrists do, means that effectively the effect of that investigation, the outcome was almost inconsequential. What it was really about was delegitimizing the current president and the other factors that I was talking about before. Creating cover for the corporate Democrats, and creating a pretext for crackdown on free speech on social media platforms. And not considering that, or not understanding that that's what actually happened, will not leave people with a clear, true understanding of the last 4 years. And again, you go on social media, you talk to centrists or Democrats these days. If you bring up any topic that they don't agree with, you're accused of being a Putin puppet or a Russia lover. It's also created like a really negative.
Now there, I think you have a point.
Cold War mentality.
No, there, I think you have a point. I do think, and I don't think it's just specific to Democrats or progressives who do this, because as you've seen in my chat, I've got somebody who just keeps calling me a commie and a whatever else. Okay. But I do think both sides, hold on. Let me finish. I let you go on for a while, and I'm agreeing with your point here. Okay. I think both sides have a tendency to just try and throw a label on the other side and put them in a box so they don't have to listen to them. And that's one of the reasons I started doing this, is because I don't want to duck the conversation. I want to have the conversation with different people. Now, the one thing is and then I'll let you, I'm going to ask you a question and then I'll let you close out. But the only thing I wanted to address was, can you see that for me, from my point of view, the evidence related to Russia is a hell of a lot higher than the evidence I've been provided with related to Hunter Biden's laptop, because that's what you originally called in about. I understand you may think they're both equal. I'm asking you to put yourself in my shoes. Can you see why I would view them differently?
Sure. I mean, I'm really not going to engage too much about the laptop issue. To me, the disconnect between the lack of evidence in both cases, but the way that one was treated totally credulously and breathlessly for an extended period of time by a client corporate media, that's what's different to me. And the way that also this Hunter Biden situation was completely censored to the point where you literally could not even share the story on Facebook or Twitter. To me, that really is the story. The way that one story was treated with backing and credulity by the corporate media, and I'm saying it was for a larger agenda. It also reveals the motivation behind the media machine that basically helps regulate people's perceptions and their information in our modern world. That to me is the bigger issue. But thank you for letting me go on about that.
Absolutely. You're more than welcome to call in anytime.
Thank you, and good luck. Have a great day.
You as well. Hope to see you again. All right, lines are open. If anybody else would want to call in, chat, I would encourage you to at least be a little generous to some of the callers. I know some of y'all were banging on him pretty hard, but hey, he had the courage to jump up there, call in. Again, it's toll free, and say his piece and what he believed. Obviously, I disagree. If somebody claimed to have a laptop about, my mother being a whore, right? And the guy who had it was legally blind and identifying it based off of, visual identification of her in a sticker, that's not going to, rate very highly on my radar as far as evidence. And I hope everybody can understand that. JS, I love that this guy is teaching me new slurs for Republicans. Putin puppet. Yeah, that's a good one. I've seen it before. And he does have a point, though. I would encourage everybody liberal, conservative, progressive, Democrat, Republican, whatever you are, to not just try and put somebody in a box that you're talking to. You need to actually have the discussions with each other, even when you disagree. You can't make peace with somebody that you already agree with. Okay? You can only make peace with somebody where there's already a disagreement. And if you can't even talk to those people, if you have to shove them in a box to avoid talking to them, that says a lot more about your own insecurities than it does about the other person, in my opinion. But I do agree that it's hilarious. Fact-checking is a liberal conspiracy to censor free speech and alternate facts. JS, I tend to agree with you. Marcus, welcome in again. I appreciate you dropping in. Political speech has repercussions. He's not innocent just because he may have been joking. I agree with you. You don't get to go yell fire in a crowded theater and then have people die and, you know, on the way out trampling each other and then say, oh, it's just a prank, bro. It doesn't work in court. This guy is an idiot, fucking libs. I'm assuming you're referring to me, Traffic Cone. You are more than welcome to call in as well if you can be civil. Cinnamon Frosted Pecans, it seems like he was being facetious more than serious. The problem with that, Cinnamon, is that it already exists. Like the charge. Obama had already gone to McConnell about this before he ever said any of that stuff. So, yeah, he might have been being facetious, but again, the allegation or the concern was already there beforehand. Caller sounds like his wife cheats on him. Come on, Traffic Cone, contribute something good. Fixar, this guy is beyond delusional. I wouldn't say he's delusional. I do think he needs to go reread the Mueller investigation. I appreciate the call. I'm sure he thinks the same thing about me. I think he's drawing connections that he can't prove yet, but I do understand that the media has a corporate bias. So he's not entirely delusional in my opinion. And I think I'm caught up. May 21st, 1919, Traffic Cone, you're going to have to give me some context. Marcus, Harry Wan has a show on TV as well. Yeah, mine's not on TV, if I get so lucky. But yeah, Harry's doing quite well. Guys, we're going to be wrapping up in about 2 to 10 minutes or so. So if anybody wants to call in or say anything final, you are more than welcome. Because I am out of coffee and I didn't take my mid-show break. Thank you for the follow, Ollie. Next man's, can you bring up an unrelated topic? Malcolm X murder, assassination, civil rights. I don't think I have time to do it justice right now. If you want to go to the webpage and email it to me, I'll be happy to jump into it next week. Women's suffrage. Yeah, excellent day. But yeah, next man, you're more than welcome to send that to me. It looks like something I would be interested in going over. This was to somebody in chat a few shows ago. They asked for the source on it. I didn't have it at the time. Basically, military-industrial complex with the government buying tanks that the Army does not need. You can go to military.com. You can find that source. Yeah, I saw that next man's about the new evidence with the deathbed confession from undercover New York PD. saying that the FBI was involved in the plot to murder Malcolm X. I haven't had a chance to do enough research on it to have a firm opinion one way or the other, to be honest with you. So like I said, go ahead and shoot it to me. And that's one of the things I was kind of planning on covering next show. I basically do not have an opinion at this point, but I do agree that it's interesting. No, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I just need to do more research into it first before I have an opinion on it. And I don't want to dive into it just completely unknowledgeable. All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for the day. We're going to run the exit video. I appreciate everybody dropping in. I appreciate the phone call. Please like, follow, subscribe wherever you're at. If you want to catch me again every Sunday, 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific. Number's always toll free. If you disagree, you get priority. So feel free to call in anytime. All you Trump supporters, I hope you can take a joke. Have a good one, everybody. See you next week. The time for silence is over.
Bye-bye, Donnie, your time is up, so you can take your lies and you can go get fucked. The people spoke and they spoke by mail, so pack your shit, cause it's time to bail. Sorry, buddy, but you lost it, mate, and like everything true, you'll call it fake. But who'd have thought you'd be such a wussy when America grabbed you by the pussy and threw you out after just one term, cause they finally realised that you're a germ. And COVID's not the only thing you spread, like lies, fear, hate, confusion and dread. And you told your own voters not to vote by mail in a global pandemic, and that was your fail. So shut up, Donnie, and practice what you preach. Have some dignity and give your concession speech. Just tell everyone it's a conspiracy. Blame your fall on American democracy. Make up excuses and a million reasons from your shitty press conference at the Four Seasons. Get out there and go tell more lies. Do what you do best and propagandize. No one's expecting you to be apologetic, but let me explain it using your logic. So you find more COVID when you do more tests, and you find more results when more votes get read. It's crazy, but that's how counting works. I can show you if you want to share your tax returns. You'll be fine, old mate. You survived impeachment. You survived coronavirus by injecting disinfectant. You've had 6 bankruptcies and 2 divorces, 200 days of tax paid golf and golf courses. You survived the guilt of putting kids in cages and 26 sexual misconduct accusations. You've only got like 4,000 active lawsuits, so man up, Donnie, and hang up the boots. Fake news, fake hair, fake tan, fake smiles, fake offshore accounts in the Cayman Isles. You're a fake president with a fake first lady who's gonna take half of your fake ass money. And you finally succeeded in building your wall around the White House, and it's 10 feet tall. For someone who hates lockdown as much as you do, you were quick to lock yourself down in there, dude. Fake friends who used you to climb the ladder, and fake everything else that no longer matters. Fake supporters who piss on homeless people. You're the sworn enemy of the American eagle, cause you tried to fool the world with no regret, and you're in $900 million debt. On the down low, if you know what I mean, like your old mate, Jeffrey Epstein. Nah, you'll be fine, you've told 20,000 lies and 230,000 people have died, just like Daddy's money gave you your start. Daddy Bannon will give you a job at Breitbart, cause no one believes your bullshit rules, cause you're doing what you said you do when you lose. So see ya, buddy, you gave it a crack, and now even Fox News hasn't got your back. So sorry, old chump, but you're out of tricks, and you can suck 75 million dicks. The people voted someone else was hired, so sorry to say it, cunt, but you're fired.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition.